We've reached a time travel episode, and boy oh boy, I've got a doozy of an entry to talk about as the core part of this script, thesis, episode, whatever. Also, contextual or actual spoilers for mentioned fictional works ahead. Hello and welcome to Author Talks, the one-person podcast in which I, Thomas Wrightson, talk about whatever I want, but generally focus down on story stuff related to books, films, games, and my own writing endeavours. In the first episode of my fourth batch of these things, I'm going to be diving into one of the thorniest fictional devices through the lens of a series I do still kinda like as a guilty pleasure memory, even though I don't watch it anymore. But since it never finished, and never focused on the science in its fiction, it's been left with a massive gaping hole where its resolution might have gone. Also, there will be discussions of it from a more general narrative angle, and as mentioned earlier, massive spoilers. Time for introductions. Between 2007 and 2011, with a small gap due to a temporary cancellation, a series called Primeval ran on British television, first on ITV1 and then on Watch. Made by the same team that created the Walking With documentary projects, the series followed a group of scientists, government officials and soldiers who discover the existence of anomalies with a capital A. Holes through space-time that appear like cracks of light surrounded by shattered glass. These anomalies form bridges to the past and eventually to the distant future, allowing creatures from those times to enter the modern world, and vice versa. The main focus of the show was displaying the then understood renditions of pre-human life on Earth, and later extrapolations of what post-human creatures would look like, such as a future predator that seemed to have evolved from bats, or futuristic spins on walruses and sharks. There are also some more out there creatures as the show progressed, such as a parasitic worm and a semi-sentient fungus. Across its 5 seasons, humans end up caught up within the anomalies, which can vanish at a moment's notice and appear seemingly at random, and it becomes clear that human efforts to understand them may have caused their appearance. Are you starting to see the issue here? For one thing, we've got time travel, which by all accounts should be impossible, and there are few if any well-defined rules within this fictional universe relating to time travel. The first season introduces a chicken and egg scenario in its first and last episodes, but also seems to imply that the then lead character has either altered time or jumped into another timeline where events are not as he remembers. Only he and his estranged wife, the main antagonist of this initial run, remember this original timeline. This change is never explained, never elaborated on, and remains a lingering question mark after both characters die in the third season. By the final cliffhanger end of the series, we are clearly shown multiple paradoxes in existence, as while it appears the initial experiment that started the anomalies was halted, the anomalies still appear and certain characters remain in the present when they should either return to their own time or cease to exist. And there are still humans who have formed loose bands surviving in the prehistoric wilderness after going through these anomalies and being unable to get home. Here's what we know about the time travel as shown in the series. The anomalies appear to have a pattern which is eventually rendered as a 3D map. They can be contained within certain materials like magnetite and used as either a power source or mapping tool or both. They link to eras both past and present and have no clear means of control despite there being means of prediction and containment. And that's all we know. Plus, if we're to believe the early promo, they are some kind of black hole type phenomenon which raises its own set of questions. How are people entering and leaving them without being torn apart by gravitational differences? And how do they make it to the other side without undergoing the effects of time dilation? There are also 3 demonstrated impacts of time travel to wrangle with, although the series plays fast and loose with them. An application of the butterfly effect, the Novikov self-consistency principle, and a causal loop. In the first and second series, it is strongly implied that something the main character did in the past triggered a temporal butterfly effect, causing a different character to effectively change identities in his present. This is stretching things a bit, especially as there's the question of a parallel universe at play, because the butterfly effect is more applied to physics rather than time travel. As for the Novikov self-consistency principle, a paradox solution created by Russian physicists Andrei Losev and Igor Novikov, which basically says events witnessed by the time travelers can't be changed, we get two examples. One is from the first series, when, upon travelling back to the Permian era and finding evidence of humans, one of the secondary characters discovers a human skeleton. In the final episode, where the characters go back to the Permian again, they end up earlier in time and cause that initial incursion, with the secondary character dying and becoming that body, saying one of the few actually good lines in the whole series as they die: "I was looking at myself." The second has the main antagonist of the third series try to stop the anomalies by killing humanity's ancestors, and while she does kill one group of Australopithecus afarensis that is discovered by paleontologists in modern times, she doesn't succeed in her overarching goal. The causal loop angle isn't explicitly shown, but it's pretty obvious. The anomalies are on track to be responsible for their own inception, with future human tech developed in relation to them feeding into their own development through being picked up by humans in the present, or rather, their past. How could this absolute mess of a plot be resolved? We don't know, and at this point we'll probably never know. Due to low ratings, a prospective 6th season was cancelled, but I doubt one season could have resolved this. A film adaptation also didn't happen, a spin-off series flopped, and generally Primeval's been left in the dust with its cast members and production crew all moving on to different projects. But here's my authorial take on how it could have resolved. The anomalies would be in existence in a space one might dub holistic time, separate and balanced with perceived linear time, which would tie into how weird they are. Maybe even tie into more recent theoretical research which links time to the existence of entropy. We've already gone over the edges in other respects, so why not? For this final story, I think some characters who either died or vanished would need to come back. Not in a traditional magical sense, but from alternate timelines. Yep, alternate timelines would play a role, perhaps entered through intersecting anomaly paths, since they are already stated to have a pattern of some sort. The whole sequence of events would likely end up being one gigantic paradox, with stuff happening in some future point, maybe in multiple timelines at once, causing a huge and messy, inciting incident. The ending would have to be a soft reset of the timelines. With the anomalies gone, everything they influenced would revert back to its original state. Characters return to their original times and places, deaths reversed, some people vanishing entirely, perhaps some relationships either salvaged or allowed to dissolve peacefully. Perhaps some vague deja vu would exist among the survivors, but nothing else. That would be the finish. And anyone who has gotten this far will recognise this proposed plot structure, particularly this speculative finale, from another time travel series, the German language Netflix series Dark. That series revolves around paradoxes and multiple timelines interacting with each other and leading towards destruction, with the only resolution being their erasure by removing the incident that triggered their emergence. I haven't intentionally borrowed that premise, it's just the only way I can see this messy anomaly situation in Primeval being resolved without leaving a plot hole the size of a supermassive black hole. I came up with this resolution literal years before I ever saw Dark or knew its plot. Speaking of black holes, we get some context for the mess of Primeval's plot through how it was being pitched and handled. The original pitch was for a 6-part epic about scientists who travelled into prehistoric times through black holes, except that rapidly disintegrated into tawdry character drama and weird conspiracies by the end of the first and into the second series. The lead actor of the time decided to leave in the third series because of the direction the series had taken, hence his character being killed off. By removing focus from its time travel plot and not having strong enough writing to compensate, unlike Dark, Primeval buckled under its own weight. Plot threads were dropped, concepts went nowhere, characters were stuck spinning their wheels. Events that should have taken 2 episodes to unwind were stretched across 3 or 4 minimum. With a stronger writing team, these issues may have been resolved. They could have wrapped up the whole thing in 3 series if they thought about it. But I recognise that it takes a special kind of mind to create a compelling and understandable time travel plot that can be worked out in a concise amount of time. Time travel plots in general are difficult at the best of times, with even the best written having oddities in their structure. These range from the wibbly-wobbly examples from later Doctor Who, or the more interesting and philosophical examples from older Doctor Who, such as Warrior's Gate, time loop exploration as with Looper and All You Need Is Kill, the constant rewriting via information transmission that happens in Thrice Upon a Time and Steins Gate, intersecting parallel timelines a la Radiant Historia and some well-known Star Trek stories, and the temporal paradoxes forming the core of Terminator, Back to the Future and many others. Dark is a series I only watched this year, and it's one of the better examples that makes the bootstrap paradox its core, something that Primeval also seems to do in relation to the anomalies, though it never really commits. But Dark could only resolve its plot by effectively deleting 2/3 of its entire world and cast, whose existence was tied to the inciting incident that created its paradox and split universe. There is a core issue outside the time travel element in how Primeval stumbled, and that is that the time travel quickly took a backseat to the characters. And bear in mind, this is a series from a production group that hadn't done this kind of narrative-driven fiction before, only documentary-style projects. They also didn't bring many external writers in, but worked mostly in-house. Small confession time. I have fond memories of Walking with Dinosaurs, despite its dinosaurs being scientifically dated by today's standards, and I continue to like Walking with Beasts and Walking with Monsters, which have aged much better. But this team can't do true fiction. The one major external contributor, Adrian Hodges, only has one other sci-fi project under his belt, mostly having worked in contemporary and historical drama. Boy does it show. And I'm going to be blunt, I don't think he's good at original characters. Concepts and adaptations, sure, but his dialogue can get very wooden at times. I can imagine a version of Primeval where the original lead character's collapsing marriage, his estranged wife's madness, the losses suffered by other characters, and the existential burdens on those whose existence was tied to the anomalies would have been compelling meat on the time travel bone. But ironically, the strongest element of the story was the time travel element, despite it not being that coherent in the end. I continue to have the anomalies in the back of my mind when I think about time travel narratives. A non-linear time portal system linking our present to both past and future and possibly contributing to its own creation? That's got so much potential, but it gets left behind and smothered by subpar writing and soapy drama. Looking at the critical response, the series got better reviews from viewers and critics when it focused on its time travel sci-fi elements and pulled away from soap storylines and political intrigue. Except it got hit with production issues and network changes, so it lost the wind out of its sails and eventually fizzled out. So we're left with an eternal cliffhanger, the fate of too many stories with great concepts but iffy executions or poor timing. And this is part of my winding way of saying, even though I don't typically like the idea of writing time travel narratives, I'd love to have a stab at concluding this story if I ever got the chance. Or maybe a miniseries reboot. Not something intended for a long run, but something that could tie a bow on the concept and show a resolution. I made an attempt to create a time travel narrative inspired by a different time travel story that was interesting to me, the video game Quantum Break. The game's story was again focused on the Novikov self-consistency principle, with multiple sequences in the story and characters' actions driven by their dealing with the ramifications of a time travel experiment gone horribly wrong and threatening to effectively break time. It's not the most consistent plot ever, but the writers apparently went really hard trying to make the time travel as loophole-free as possible, insofar as you can make time travel loophole-free. In my basic scenario, which was inspired by both Quantum Break and my musings on how the heck the anomalies would work in Primeval, I imagined a scenario where someone is caught in an experiment relating to harnessing small pockets of energy appearing in the world. They will be trapped in holistic time, able to project themselves into linear time. A quirk of this would be that the projection may be killed, but the real person wouldn't be harmed. They will be divorced from linear time and privy to information out of order due to their ability to project. One scene I'd had in mind was where someone saw another version of them appear and the now dead version disappear. The narrative would have been split between two perspectives, the person trapped in holistic time and survivors of the failed experiment continuing down linear time. The resolution would have been something along the lines of the experiment caused the strange energy, which is a danger to attempt harnessing, and in preventing the inciting incident, time would be rewritten dramatically. But when I tried writing that story, I just found myself getting stuck before I'd gotten beyond 2 pages. There's a reason time travel plots are apt to leave a bad taste in the mouth when used, because they are absolutely not easy to write. If someone just did it, then without really looking at how it would work, the whole plot becomes extremely messy. Don't even get me started on stories where younger and older versions of the same character interact, or the implications of someone just redoing or undoing a redo or undo that goes wrong. Looking at you, Flashpoint. To go on a small tangent, as if this whole episode hasn't been small tangents already, old Doctor Who remains a favourite with me despite it poorly aging in terms of gender roles and ethnic representation, not just because it knows when to pull back from overbearing music and purple prose and needless catchphrases, but because they knew when to hold back on the time travel. History-focused stories made it very clear that changes in the flow of time either couldn't or shouldn't be made, and later ones that strayed into the insert historical figure here areas did so with the tongue firmly in the cheek. Also, those set in the past tended to be a closed circle, such as an Edwardian lighthouse, or the back streets of London, or a fictional Italian dukedom, or a 1920s country house. Because of this, when they did leverage time travel and delved into its scientific elements, it generally worked. The TARDIS worked because it wasn't a Deus Ex Tempus. Time Lords worked because they only broke their non-interference rules in the direst circumstances, and historical excursions worked because the Doctor wasn't pulling out anachronistic tech every 5 seconds, instead using whatever was available within that time period. Alright, tangent over. So, that's a lot of stuff off my chest that's been gestating for roughly 10 years or so. Will I ever get the chance to work on anything like Primeval, let alone a resurrection of that project? Almost certainly not, but it's nice to dream about. And maybe one day I'll have the wherewithal to sit down and actually create a sci-fi time travel escapade that doesn't fall apart when it's brushed by a light breeze. And until then, I guess we'll have to see. And experience more time travel narratives, because if you only have a very few in your head, your work will be very barren. I hope you enjoyed this prolonged journey into an ancient, not even cult series, sub-cult series, and my writerly fury at how poorly its story and concepts were used. If you enjoyed, please do share and subscribe for future episodes and updates on my own writing projects, including the upcoming Murderer's Lament. Until next we meet on the endless flow of time, see ya! Hello, from the real me. Yes, I am not an AI. I have actually written the script that you just heard. I narrated it, I recorded it, I edited it, I did all kinds of jiggery-pokery with it. Not that much jiggery-pokery. Anyway, this is a YouTube exclusive just to let you see me, and hopefully not dox myself in the process. But if you're interested in more like this, and not only that, but more videos on subjects like video game series or other stuff, not films, because my Bionicle video got taken down basically because Lego was being extremely overprotective about a brand they wanted to do nothing with. But mild sarcasm or pointed insult. Anyway, if you're interested, then please do subscribe. Maybe let me know on my socials or through my website what you'd like to see from me in the future. Reasonable suggestions will be taken into account. Unreasonable ones will only be taken into account if they are fun. So this is Thomas Wrightson signing off for the moment. I've got things coming up that I will let you know about when there's more solid dates, and take care, stay safe.